All right, peace. We're gonna get into this note on heaven and earth, on the symbol of heaven and earth, right? Because we know that God often recycles symbols in the Bible, which is why, like, if you read a book like Revelation or something like that, you have to be familiar with the symbology used throughout the Bible. Otherwise, you know what I'm saying? It says, "Let him that readeth," you know what I'm saying, understand. The book of Revelation, when you're reading it, is kind of like a book where you have to be familiar with the whole rest of the Bible. Otherwise, a lot of the symbols, they don't particularly make sense, but they make perfect sense if you're familiar with the symbology of the Bible. We're not going to explain Revelation in this video, but we are going to talk about the symbol of heaven and earth and what that is, right? So first and foremost, heaven and earth is just a symbol of a dominion. You know what I'm saying? Remember, when God created the actual heaven and earth, he gave man dominion over it. And so when God creates another heaven and earth, or a smaller version, it's just talking about a rulership or dominion that he gave them. But I'll get into it, right? This is the book of Matthew, chapter 5, and verse 17 through 18. Think not that I am come to destroy the law or the prophets. I am not come to destroy, but to fulfill. For verily I say unto you, till heaven and earth pass, one jot or one tittle shall in no wise pass from the law, till all be fulfilled. He is referring here to the law of Moses and the prophets. Everything concerning him needed to be fulfilled. Then, when heaven and earth passed away, jots and tittles would pass from the law because of a new covenant. Let's explore. So jots and tittles would pass when heaven and earth passed. But if you think the whole planet passed, then why didn't the whole law pass? Well, because heaven and earth is referring to something specific in this verse. And we're going to get to it, right? Let's explore. This is Luke 24 and 44. It says, And he said unto them, These are the words which I spake unto you while I was yet with you, that all things must be fulfilled, which were written in the law of Moses and in the prophets and in the Psalms concerning me. What does it mean when he says heaven and earth passing away? Let's give an example. This is the book of Isaiah, chapter 65 and verse 17 through 18. It says, For behold, I create new heavens and a new earth, and the former shall not be remembered nor come into mind. But be ye glad and rejoice forever in that which I create. For behold, I create Jerusalem a rejoicing, and her people a joy. Heaven and earth is creation language, which is God declaring that he is about to create, renew life on earth or land, whether literally Adam and Eve or spiritually, Hosea 6 and 1 and Isaiah 65 and 17 through 18. So you see the heaven and earth that he's creating in Isaiah 65 and 17 through 18 is the same as the Jerusalem that he's creating a rejoicing. The chapter is talking about him restoring the people of Israel to their original land that God had given them, which is being referred to as the heaven and earth in this verse. So it says, to the Jews, Jerusalem and Israel, their land represented heaven and earth. Isaiah 65 and 17 through 18. So their land was the heaven and earth. If you go to Jeremiah chapter 4, and I believe verse 23 and 24, it talks about how I beheld the earth and it was void, the heavens and they were empty. Or I beheld the earth and it was empty, and the heavens and they were void. Jeremiah is not speaking about the literal complete cosmos. He's talking about the land of Israel. In context of the chapter, he's talking about the land of Israel being destroyed and made desolate, and he's saying that it is the desolate heaven and earth. And remember, in the curses of Deuteronomy, he said, I will make the heaven above your head brass and the earth beneath you copper, or something like that. I'm misquoting it, but if you go to Deuteronomy 28 and verse 15 down, he talks about the heaven and earth, which is their land, being enslaved and being a curse to them. You see what I'm saying? It says, their heaven and earth came with a covenant, which was the law of Moses and the land of Canaan. 2 Chronicles 6 and 31, that they may fear thee to walk in thy ways so long as they live in the land which thou gavest unto our fathers. That's the heaven and earth that God gave them, their own country, their own land. Let's keep going. Christ says that their heaven and earth will pass away, and his words, which are the new covenant, they are spirit and they are life. That's what Christ came to preach, the new covenant. will remain. Matthew 24:35, heaven and earth shall pass away, but my words shall not pass away. Because Christ, the gospel was called the everlasting gospel in the book of Revelation, and it endured to all generations. His words didn't pass away, but how did heaven and earth pass away? Well, it's not talking about the physical, literal cosmos passing away. It's actually talking about the old covenant land passing away, because that was their heaven and earth. Like I said, Jerusalem. Mark 13:31, heaven and earth shall pass away, but my words shall not pass away. Luke 21:33, heaven and earth shall pass away, but my word shall not pass away. Meaning, when the heaven and earth passed away, there would only be Christ's covenant left. Paul affirms this in Hebrews, in that he saith, a new covenant, he hath made the first old, now that which decayeth and waxeth old is ready to vanish away. That's the heaven and earth passing away, which is the old covenant, which is what? The covenant for keep my law, have the land of Canaan. That's the deal. That's passing away. That's why in Hebrews, in another place, it says, here we have no enduring city. Why? Because Jerusalem was about to be destroyed during the time the New Testament was being written. Let's keep reading. But it can only vanish away at the passing of heaven and earth. Let's read Hebrews 12:26. Whose voice then shook the earth, but now he hath promised, saying, yet once more I shake not the earth only, but also heaven. And this word, yet once more, signifieth the removing of those things that are shaken, which is the Old Testament and the Old Covenant, heaven and earth. That's going to be done away with. We just read that the Old Covenant was going to wax old and depart away. He just said the removing of the things that are shaken, as of things that are made, that those things which cannot be shaken may remain. The things that cannot be shaken that may remain is the preaching of Christ, the new covenant. That cannot be shaken, and it can only remain. It's the things that cannot remain are the things that are being removed, which are the heaven and earth. So Christ's words endure, but the heaven and earth are shaken and renewed and removed and renewed. Now hold on a second. Watch this. Let's go to the blue letter and let's see what God does to the heaven and earth. Watch this. This is the book of Hebrews, chapter 1 and verse 10. Now look at what God does with the heaven and earth. And this is just talking about him changing eras of time. It says, and thou, Lord, in the beginning hast laid the foundation of the earth, and the heavens are the works of thine hands. They shall perish, but thou remainest, and they all shall wax old as doth a garment. What do you do when a garment waxes old? You change it. Same body, but you change the face of the earth. That's all that's dealing with. God is just saying he's creating new eras, creating new kingdoms, doing new things. That's all he's saying. It says, and as a vesture, thou shalt fold them up, and they shall be changed. But thou art the same, and thy years shall not fail. So he just said that as a vesture, same body, he's going to strip the kingdoms of the earth. He's going to change them, etc. You see what I'm saying? But the word earth, if you look at it in the Greek, it can mean an arable tract of land. So God doesn't change the whole planet at once. Remember, God said to Noah that he would no longer destroy the earth in that way. He wouldn't do that again where he destroys the whole earth. You see what I'm saying? So he destroys parts of the earth at a time, judges parts of the earth at a time, and changes them into different, like how he did the land of Canaan. He said the iniquity of the Amorites is not yet full. And then what did he do? He changed the earth. He took the Amorites and Canaanites out for the most part, and then he replaced it with the Israelites, and it became their kingdom. You see what I'm saying? And that's how God changes the heaven and earth. Anyways, let's get back to the note. It says, the heaven and earth passes is shaken at Christ's return, the day of wrath. This is Revelation 6 and 12 through 17. The New Testament is all prophesying about the same thing, by the way. It's not the same as the Old Testament. The Old Testament, the prophecies are more spread out over a larger distance of time. Anyway, let's get back to Revelation 6. It says, and I beheld when he had opened the sixth seal. Now remember, the sixth seal is from the book of judgment that's poured out upon Mystery Babylon. That's talking about the judgment of first century Jerusalem, but we'll get into that in another video. It says, and I beheld when he had opened the sixth seal, and lo, there was a great earthquake, and the sun became black as sackcloth of hair, and the moon became as blood. That's a symbol as well, by the way. It says, and the stars of heaven fell onto the earth. That's another symbol. I'll explain the stars of heaven symbol in another video. It says, even as a fig tree, the fig tree is another symbol. I'll explain that in another video. Casteth her untimely figs when she is shaken of a mighty wind. And the heaven departed, heaven and earth passing away. To depart is to pass away. It says, and the heaven departed as a scroll when it is rolled together, and every mountain and island were moved out of their places. And the kings of the earth, and the great men and the rich men, and the chief captains and the mighty men, and every bondman and free man hid themselves. This is a symbol of Isaiah chapter 24, by the way, where it talks about every man of the land being judged. If you go back to Isaiah 24, it talks about how the earth is turned upside down, as with the priest, so the prophet. That earth being turned upside down, if you pay attention to the chapter, is talking again about the desolation of Jerusalem and Israel. You see what I'm saying? So it has a specific context, the same way it has a specific context here in the New Testament, right? But it's veiled because the book of Revelation is a book of symbols that are encoded to people who already have the understanding of the symbols of the rest of the Bible. It says, and the chief captains and the mighty men and every bondman and every free man hid themselves in the dens and in the rocks of the mountains, and said to the mountains and rocks, fall on us and hide us from the face of him that sitteth on the throne and from the wrath of the Lamb, for the great day of his wrath is come, and who shall be able to stand? Right? It says the wrath was upon the Israelites. Jesus told them that. Let's read it. This is Luke chapter 21 and 23. But woe unto them that are with child, and to them that give suck in those days. Read Luke chapter 21. He's literally talking to the Israelites and about the wrath that is going to specifically come upon them. And he says in another place that they should flee to the mountains. Why should they flee to the mountains? Well, didn't it just say they shall say to the rocks and the mountains, fall on us and hide us from the face of him that sitteth on the throne? Flee to the mountains. Then he said they're going to use the mountains to hide in. Interesting callback. John is repeating what was repeated in what was stated in the gospel. It says the wrath was upon the Israelites, Luke 21 and 23, but woe unto them that are with child and to them that give suck in those days, right? Basically women who are nursing children, because it's going to be hard for them to flee. For there shall be great distress in the land. The word for land there is the same word that's used for earth plenty of times. It's the understanding is made or broken by the way that the translators chose to translate the word. Sometimes they translate it as earth, sometimes they translate it as land. Just look it up. It says, in wrath upon this people, right? This is possessive. So he's talking about wrath upon the Israelites. It says, at the shaking of the heaven and earth, heaven passing away, something is being removed. Hebrews 12 and 26 through 27. 1 Corinthians 7 and 31. And they that use this world as not abusing it, for the fashion of this world passeth away. The fashion, the way it's made, the what? The garment, the thing that God made to cover it. What did God make to cover the Old Testament world? The blood of bulls and goats. What did God make to cover the New Testament world? The blood of Christ. So he was doing away with the sacrificial system. That's the same thing it says in the book of Hebrews. For it was impossible that the blood of bulls and goats should take away sins under the old covenant. But what does take away sins? Well, it says the same in the book of Hebrews. It says Jesus, by his one sacrifice, put away sin, and hath perfected forever them that are sanctified. Interesting. So the old covenant that was ratified with the blood of bulls and goats was taken away. That covering was taken away. That's why he said, now ye say ye see, and you have no covering for your sin. Weren't the blood of bulls and goats to take away the sins of ignorance? But the high-handed sins were not taken away by the blood of bulls and goats. That's what he told the scribes and Pharisees. Now you say we see, therefore your sin remains. They had no covering for their sin. You see? But the covering of Christ Jesus is a different covering totally. You see the symbology of the Old Testament? The Old Covenant was represented in a covering of the blood of bulls and goats and slain animals. And the New Testament covering, or the new heaven, new earth, the new covering is the blood of Christ. Interesting. It's the book of Hebrews. All praises. The fashion of in this verse is the Greek word schema, which means manner of living. The manner of living was changed from the manner of living prescribed by Moses to the manner of living prescribed by Christ. Their sacrificial system, their customs, etc. Why do you think they say Christians can eat pork, but Jews couldn't? Because the manner of life changed. It says, which Paul verifies in Hebrews 8 and 13, where he says the old covenant is vanishing away. This is my note, by the way. 1 John 2 and 17. And the world, what the heck? And the world passeth away, and the lust thereof, but he that doeth the will of God abideth forever. Now we know that in the old covenant, the only way for them to have the eternal inheritance was to obey the word of God. And it's the same thing in the New Testament. Daniel said in the book of Daniel, the angel said to Daniel, go thy way, Daniel, and in the end times you shall stand in your lot, which means Daniel's going to receive his lot at the resurrection. And he's going to abide forever in that lot that he receives. And it's the same thing here. When they do the will of God, isn't that what Jesus said? He literally told them, they that say unto me in that day, Lord, Lord, shall not all enter into the kingdom of heaven, but he that doeth the will of my Father which is in heaven. Those people that enter into his kingdom abide forever. They did the will of God on earth, which is what? To repent and to keep the commandments of God. What are the commandments? To love your neighbor and to love God. Those are the commandments. It says the world / heaven and earth is passing away. Several times the New Testament repeats that they're in the last days already. Times, etc. at the end of the world, right before heaven and earth passes away. He's telling them multiple times they're already in the end times. They're in the end of it. What are they in the end of, though? They're at the time where God is changing the garment of the heaven and earth. It's the end of the old covering that God gave them, which was what? The old covering for sin was the animal sacrifice. The new covering for sin is Christ. That's the changing of the heaven and earth. That's the changing of the covering. Let's read. Hebrews 9 and 26. For then must he often have suffered since the foundation of the world, which the foundation of the world was the original covering, the sprinkling of the blood of the bulls and goats. But now once in the end of the world hath he appeared to put away sin by the sacrifice of himself. So not only did his sacrifice end something, but it began something as well. It began the new heaven and earth, or the new covering, the changing of the garment that we read earlier in Hebrews. And it ended something else, which was the putting away of sin that could not be rectified by the blood of bulls and goats. Let's read. It says, the day Christ was born marked the end of the world. So when Christ was born, that was the mark of the end of things and the bringing in of something new. Christ was the first among many brethren. That's what he said, right? This is 1 Peter 4 and 7. But the end of all things is at hand. If something is at hand, it means it's in reachable distance. It says, be ye therefore sober and watch unto prayer. So we see clearly that the old covenant only remained until the heaven and earth of the Jews, old covenant Jerusalem, passed away. Why? Because when the temple passed away, they couldn't offer sacrifices anymore or keep feast days, etc. Now remember, Jesus said earlier, and we went over it, one jot or one tittle shall not pass from the law till heaven and earth pass away. So that means that when the temple was destroyed and they could no longer keep feast days, that was a jot and tittle that passed from the law, meaning that the heaven and earth had to be attached to their law keeping. Let's keep reading. their ability to keep the law. It says, and that when that covenant and city passed away, the words of Christ did not pass away. Meaning the city was shaken and destroyed, and the temple was shaken and destroyed, so that Christ's temple and Christ's city and Christ's words would remain, the things he built. Remember, Christ spoke of the temple of his body, which is what? The church. The church remained after Jerusalem was destroyed. They fled to Pella. Let's keep reading. John 14:6, Jesus saith unto him, I am the way, and the truth, and the life. No man cometh unto the Father but by me. Christ changed the law of God. We'll demonstrate that in a later note. That's in the book of Hebrews, I believe chapter 10. It's where it says, when the priesthood being changed, there is of necessity a change also of the law. So yeah, I hope I was able to provide some edification in this video. And I want to say peace and blessings to all the living saints of God.